Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Think Small podcast. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today's guest is someone who is going to challenge some assumptions you might have about what a modern retail business looks like. Here's a question. When was the last time you got a catalog in the mail? I'm from the Sears and Roebuck days, so now I've dated myself, but when did you get a real physical printed catalog? My guest today leads a company that sends 14 million of them every year, and that company was just named one of USA Today's best stores of 2026. Kendra Reichenau is the CEO of Heartland America, a 40-year-old direct-to-consumer catalog and online retailer based here in Chaska, Minnesota. She was brought in as CEO in 2021 with one of the most honest job briefs I've ever heard. Turn this company around, stabilize it, and grow it. And she did all three. And earlier this year, the company was acquired by S5 Equity as a strategic companion to Hammacher Schlemmer, another retailer you might be familiar with Kendra remaining at the helm. She's also been on the other side of that transaction, advising PE firms on acquisitions, which makes her perspective on what just happened to her own company genuinely unusual. So Kendra, it's such a pleasure to have you here, or welcome to Think Small.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about Heartland America.
You know, we're a 40-year-old cataloger. We focus really on everyday values and treating our customer with kindness. And we work with a slightly older customer, someone who's on a fixed income, who's very thoughtful about how they spend their money. And we are here to really support them and help them navigate where they can find great products and great value with great service.
Interesting. And so how do you treat someone with kindness as an online retailer?
Well, you can call us on the phone, and probably 80% of our customers choose to call us on the phone. And we know that we're treating them with kindness because we do record every call, but they also give us feedback. So probably 20% of every order placed, someone fills out a quick survey. And I can tell you that in general, we're between a 4.5 and a 4.6 stars out of 5. And so that allows me to really see how the company feels, how we're doing, how they're being treated. Have we resolved their issue? Are they satisfied? And would they tell a friend? And I think those simple questions give us a good understanding of how we're treating the customer. And then we're able to coach up if there is someone who tends to be scoring below what we consider to be an acceptable standard.
So you're watching that statistic very carefully.
We watch all of our statistics. You know, we track our Trustpilot scores, we track our Google scores, we track our product scores. And it's one of the reasons why we've been able to be recognized not only by USA Today for best online store and best customer service, but also Newsweek. I think we've won 5 years in a row now, best online store. And all of that is because we really care about the quality, service, and value that we share with our customers.
That's wonderful to hear. There's so many bad customer experiences out there, right? So it's lovely to hear that there's an old school company that's still focused on that. Good for you.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When you said you come from the Sears and Roebuck days, when I was early in my career in college, I worked for both Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus. And that's how I paid my way through college. And it was all about service in those days, right? It was the Tom Peters in Search of Excellence days, or yes, Stanley Marcus minding the store. And that's the era that I come from, is service. And you treat your customers with kindness because you play the long game. And we're here to play the long game.
Well, that's a fun commonality we have. I worked at Nordstrom in college as well, but I never brought home any money because I wanted to buy all the cool clothes. So before we get into the Heartland America turnaround, I wanted to have the listening audience understand the career that built you up to this. So you mentioned Nordstrom, you went to Gap, you ran your own consulting firm, you led businesses for Luxottica and Kohler, ran a company called Coulee Bar as CEO and positioned that one for acquisitions. So that's a very deliberate arc across a lot of very different retail models. What did you learn along the way that you couldn't have learned any other way?
I think having an intellectual curiosity is really the key to all of this, and really having a love of the customer and a love of product. And I think if you love the customer, which I do, and appreciate whomever your customer is, right? And really loving the product and the service, I think there's a lot of interesting models, whether it's manufacturing or wholesale or retail or brick and mortar or omnichannel. It all boils down to the same thing. It's the same pillars, but how you execute it is different. And I think that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So you were hired in 2021 with this explicit mandate: turn this business around, stabilize it, and grow it. So most CEOs who inherit a distressed business spend the first year just kind of figuring out what's actually broken, but you went straight to work. So walk me through the first 90 days. What did you look at first? What did you find? And what was the one thing that if you hadn't have fixed it fast would have made everything else impossible? You've got a very unique process that you use.
I do. So when I'm interviewing for a job, believe it or not, one of the first things I ask to do is take a walk of the warehouse, assuming the warehouse is in-house and not a 3PL. And the reason why I do that is because you can see a lot into the organization as to how they manage their warehouse, both in terms of how they manage their cash, right? Because inventory is cash, and how they actually treat the warehouse. Is it clean? Is it tidy? Is everything put away? Are orders shipped out next day? And it kind of can reflect what I would call a business discipline and rigor. And usually if the warehouse is a bit of a mess or discombobulated, or there's a lot of RTVs, or there's products on the ground, or things haven't been received, it probably means that you don't have the right data analytics and you don't have the correct process and procedures to have a well-run organization. So when I can tell that returns aren't up to date or RTVs haven't been taken care of, all these just natural processes that need to happen, there's other issues going on in the company. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is I really ask questions around what data they are using to make their decisions. And if they can't answer what I would say kind of basic fundamental questions around their sales, customer information, response rates for a catalog, or digital sales, or paid search analytics, and if they're not really confident with their answers, there's a data issue. And usually I would say when you're doing these turnarounds is the reason why they're in a distressed situation is because they don't have good data, or they have too much data, but either way, they don't know how to use their data to make decisions. And if you don't have good data, you can't make good decisions because you're basically functioning, you're blind, you don't know. And I think that would be on these smaller companies, or when a company's in a bad situation, is you really need to get a handle on your data and what are the few things you're going to look at to help you make quick decisions. Because usually when you're in a distressed situation, 80% is better than nothing, and you kind of have to go with the 80. You have to be comfortable making good decisions when it's still a little bit gray.
Yeah. And so, systems had been put in place at Heartland right before you arrived, and they weren't working. How do you lead a team through that kind of operational chaos without demoralizing the people that were there before you?
Well, I might have demoralized a couple. When you're in that type of, so when I showed up, they had implemented a new call center, a new ERP system, and a new website. They'd kind of done a big bang. And to be candid, the system was crashing all day long. 50% of the time they weren't answering the phones because it was disconnecting. There were a lot of problems when I first showed up. And sadly, or right or wrong, I'm probably a little bit of a bull in a china shop. You don't really have time because you're hemorrhaging. Yeah. And when you're kind of in that situation, you do move to a little bit more of a command and control situation, and you're very in the weeds, and you're not looking out, you're looking right down, right? I've always said a good CEO, what's it called, a monocle and an onicle or something, where your one eye is looking down and one eye is looking out. But sometimes when you show up and it's more dire, you're just looking down, right? One foot in front of the other and figuring out slowly, quickly, but methodically, where's the biggest hemorrhage and how do you put your thumb in the dike to really stop the bleed. And in that situation, we had to go back to basics to really make sure we just started to fundamentally, answer the phone, ship complete, get the returns caught up, answer our phones, enter the orders, very basic blocking and tackling for the first year. And then once that's stabilized and you have a baseline, then you can start to look out and figure out, okay, how are we going to, now that we've stabilized, how do we want to grow?
Yeah.
Right. So you just have to kind of know what you can't take on too much. And you have to have some quick wins. The best way to build trust with the team is to have a couple quick wins so that then the team can say, oh, okay, she knows what she's doing, or, oh, okay, I agree with what she's doing. That makes sense, right? And quickly trying to get buy-in, prioritize what's the worst issue, and get that solved is the best way for the team not only to have confidence in you, but to also have confidence in themselves, right? Because really what you want is you want to build this muscle, their muscles, on how do I identify problems and solve them.
Yes. And give them authority to solve them.
Absolutely, because you can't do it all on your own, right? And, once the team really understands not that everyone needs to understand everyone's job, but everyone needs to understand what role they play in the context of everyone else's job. And you really develop this intellectual curiosity and kind of problem-solving culture. Then to your point, like they're off and running, right? They actually know what to do, how to do it, how to work together, how to build a high-performing team. And it's very rewarding. I mean, I will say, I guess from an ego point of view, doing turnarounds is incredibly satisfying when you can come in, identify issues, get the team working together, and together successfully solve the problems and really then have a well-run business is probably the most satisfying thing for everyone because you feel really good about what you've accomplished together.
Yeah, that's a great pearl of wisdom there. One of those stats that shows you were successful at doing that is your Trustpilot score went from 1.5 when you first got there, right, to 4.7. Was it really just this basic blocking and tackling, or was there something else that you did to, sprinkle some pixie dust on the team to get to that kind of a turnaround?
We have a little pixie dust. I actually have one person who 50% of the time really deals with customer reviews. And if someone is not happy and they take the time to write a review, she actually personally reaches out, gets the issue resolved to their satisfaction. And to be candid, half of the time she gets them to change the review. And you'll see it in there. They'll say, Danielle met with me and she's so amazing that I've changed my review from a 2 to a 5 or whatever it is. And because loyalty matters.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of choice out there and you can't afford to upset a customer. And so to us, every customer matters, and delivering that kindness, that service, delivering the quality of the product and the good, all these things matter. And so it's just one review at a time. And it's taken a few years to get it going in the right direction. And then once you're there, it's kind of addictive, right?
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
oh, can I get us to 4.8? Can I get us to 4? We're constantly like, how do we even surprise and delight the customer more?
Yeah. Sounds kind of like the Walt Disney approach to customer service.
Well, that would be my goal, right? I mean, They're really A+ in service, so that would be lovely.
Exactly. Well, here's something that I think is going to be genuinely counterintuitive for most of our listeners. The entire consumer retail industry right now seems to be obsessed with reaching the young, the urban, the digital first buyers. You went in the opposite direction. Your customer is a 60 plus, mostly male, lives in middle America, and still orders by mail or calls you on the phone, as you just said. You get 2,000 mail orders a week and 1,600 phone calls a day, and you just got named one of USA Today's best stores. Make the case. Why is your customer, the one that everybody else is ignoring, actually one of the best customers in retail right now?
Well, because they're so loyal, right? I mean, I don't think, look, we're never going to be some huge, big business, right? But there's white space out there if you can find those little pockets of customers that would really appreciate what you do, and then they're loyal to you. And when I look at our response rates on the book, and I look at how often our customer comes back and the frequency and recency in which they buy, I would tell you we are delivering 3 times what a normal digital experience is. Because the digital customer is not as loyal. They're constantly looking elsewhere, and our customer, once they trust us, they come back because we are delivering on the promise. And I think that's what sets us apart.
Yeah, and as the old saying goes, right, it's easier to sell to the same customer than to go spend money to find a new customer, right?
Absolutely. In terms of lifetime value, absolutely. And, I feel incredibly proud of our stats in terms of how often our customer comes back on a regular basis.
And so does that limit your growth potential? Like if, there's only so many 60 plus white males living in middle America, right? How do you grow beyond maybe
we are growing digitally for sure. And then we're slightly younger segments. But I think what most people do is we have an older customer and then they try and go for 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds. And, maybe we just inch down maybe 5-10 years younger and start to test what do they want? What are they looking for? How do they want to shop with us? Do they look at the catalog but buy it online? What works for them? And so I think we're constantly looking for more customers. We were more male dominated than we are today. We definitely have more female customers, and that's been a big part of the growth story, is providing an assortment that also appeals to women without alienating the loyal male customer. I mean, I think all of these things have to be iterative. It can't be or.
Right.
And so we've just methodically and thoughtfully, slowly grown the business, not crazy comps, but at the same time, very thoughtfully and effectively growing them.
Have you been able to measure, trust in buying online, right? I mean, everybody's been scammed by something on the internet, right? and with
right. I mean, I think, we have our awards, we have our Trustpilot score. We have our BBB, we're A+ on BBB, which to an older customer is a very important. So we've been highly recognized by BBB in terms of how we manage and run the business. And so, between Trustpilot and Google scores and, all the above, I think, if you read our customer reviews, you'll see that in general, the customer's pretty happy. And so I think that builds confidence along the way.
Yeah.
From an online perspective, at least.
Okay, well, let's pivot to, the PE acquisition. So in March 2025, S5 Equity acquired Heartland America as a bolt-on to Hammacher Schlemmer.
Correct.
What makes your experience here unusual is that before you were the CEO being acquired, you spent 2 years advising PE firms on what to buy and how to think about it. So you've been on both sides of the table, which gives you a really unique perspective.
Yes.
What does a PE acquisition actually feel like from the inside when you're the CEO of the company being bought?
I mean, it's both exciting and nerve-wracking a little bit, right? You want to be acquired because that's what you're being paid to do. On the other side, you don't really know who's acquiring you, right? I mean, you slowly get to know them, but everyone's kind of on their best behavior and you don't really know what the new boss. I mean, it's almost like taking a new job, right? You leave one job, you move to another, you hope it's the right job, you hope you're picking the right new boss. You have conversations around how you're going to grow and how you're going to treat your employees go forward and what the strategy is. But at the end of the day, you don't always know, right? Usually they do a lot of due diligence on you. You don't necessarily do due diligence on them. So it's a little bit more vague. But I think part of it is knowing why you've been hired. And, there is pressure always to scale and grow. And you have to scale and grow just to keep up with your expenses that unfortunately continue to grow, right? Or you just get a little squeezed in the middle. So I think what I've learned having, I turned Coolabar around and successfully sold that, and then kind of sat on the other side of the table with PE and looked at deals for 2 years, is really understanding how they look at the economics, how they look at the partnerships, how they look at their investment dollars and how they put them to work and what's important to them. And so I wouldn't say that I know everything by any means, but I definitely have been fortunate enough to be able to sit on both sides of the table. And so I'm comfortable working with PE because usually I'm pretty clear what they want and what the expectations are. And at least I understand it, and hopefully pick the right PE firm so that we're aligned in terms of the growth strategy.
Yeah, so let's dig a little deeper into that, because for our listeners, if they are considering selling to a PE and they want to still remain involved, private equity firms have very different pace that they want to go at, right? They want returns for their shareholders within a 3 to 5 year time horizon, not a 7 to 10 year horizon, right? And so the pace tends to be faster. There's more demands. Did you have to bring on, additional resources in order to go faster? What kinds of pivots happened when PE
Right.
came in?
In general, I move pretty fast, so I don't usually think that's the problem. I'm a very transparent person. So for me, I need to immediately build trust with the PE firm, right, with the boss. And so I've learned just to, as I'm uncovering issues or solving problems, I usually just say it out loud so that they are partnering with me along the way. I don't tend to hide things. I think that can really bite you if you're just not transparent on a regular basis. And so my recommendation is always to say, hey, I've uncovered this. Either A, I don't know and I'm working on it, or B, this is what I'm working on, so that they know and can partner with me. And I ask for feedback, like, what do you think? Do you agree? Is this the best way to go? And I really use the PE firm. Like, who do you know in the industry? I'm looking for someone like this. Do you know someone? I mean, to me, they're part of the team and I can't be successful without them. And usually they're pretty willing to help look if I'm looking for something or need help. Mm-hmm. And so I usually find at least one, depending on how big the board is, usually partnering with one or two. I usually have the meeting before the meeting would be my other, is find that one or two board members who can really support me. And I usually work the deck or my thoughts or the pivotal issues beforehand so that I have a partner in the room. And then for me, based on my skills, having a really good CFO is usually a non-negotiation. And so as I'm interviewing for the job, if I don't have confidence with the finance team, I usually bring that up in the interview, to be candid, and just say, I don't think we have the right strength. And getting that right person on board is pivotal. I am not a finance person. And having that kind of partnership, joined at the hip is critical for me to be able to do the job that we need to do.
Yeah. So one difference with you is that you reached out to S5 directly because they were in your sphere of influence, right? But for a lot of these founders, they don't know, should I go through a formal banker process? Like what advice would you have for somebody that doesn't have that network like what you have?
I probably would research some sort of investment banker or business broker and get their opinion and have them kind of evaluate. Usually they'll evaluate your business for you for free because obviously at one point they want to sell it, and really understand, how sound is my business? How profitable is my business? What is my business worth? What do I need to do to get ready for sale, right? And there are individuals, there's companies, small, big, and just really eking out where you are and when you're ready and what you're really willing to do to get there would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and even if you're not ready to sell for 3 years, 5 years, whatever, I think it's a great exercise to go through because the broker or the investment banker will tell you.
Yeah, they'll give you a list of, okay, this is what you have to do if you want to get there. And then part of it is also deciding, do you want to stay? Do you want to roll over? Do you want to just wash your hands of it? And, do you then need to create a successor to take your place? I mean, all of this planning is probably pretty important and critical depending where you are in the cycle of your life and your business dreams.
Yeah, and having that roadmap of what do you
Yes.
need to do, right, tells you where you need to be making your investments if that's your
Yes.
to exit, right? So
Yes.
always a helpful thing to have.
I mean, I think the other thing I would say is, depending how badly you want to sell, is be reasonable. Sometimes I think people hear about these one or two incredible exits where the multiples are just insanely high, and then that's everyone's expectation. So I think really being realistic about what is your company worth and what do you want to do with your life, because I think sometimes people start to, when you've run your business your whole life, it's kind of your baby, and everyone thinks their baby is beautiful and the most beautiful baby ever. And the reality is there's very few babies that are that beautiful, right? And so, not to be mean, just being realistic. And I think because they're not my companies, I come in, I'm probably a little bit more pragmatic about appreciating, okay, yes, the baby has beautiful eyes, but not the cutest hands or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just more realistic. And I think that also helps get the deal done.
Absolutely. All right, Kendra, well, here's the last question. You've turned around a business, navigated PE acquisitions, and maintained a 2.6 return rate and a 4.7 Trustpilot score in the process. For some of our listeners, maybe they're a little anxious about where their own business is heading. Maybe they've been in so deep in the work that they haven't looked up in months. What are 3 things that you would tell them to go look at Monday morning to make sure that everything is rowing in the same direction from your experience?
So in our business, I would say really looking at your inventory turn, right? Really making sure you understand how your inventory is. Are you sitting on some things that are long? You really need to, don't assume. I think a big mistake people make is they don't mark it down and they let it sit there, and all of a sudden it's been sitting there for too long. If it's not selling, sell it and get rid of it, move it out. And I think keeping that inventory turning, I know you think, oh, I can't afford to take the markdown, but you actually can't afford to keep it sitting there. It costs you more. So really understand your inventory mix, your inventory turn, your margins, right? Your profitability. We've moved everything to a contribution margin analysis so that we really understand the full contribution margin, what is made when we sell a product through. Not just looking at product margin, but the whole way through shipping, understanding your shipping. It is getting harder and harder to ship profitably, especially if you have a high return rate. If you have a high return rate, cancel those products that have high returns. Like, I don't care how many you sell, but if you've got our return rate is low, as you said, it's running around 2.8, 2.6, depending. You can't afford a 10% return rate. You can't afford a 20% return rate, and you've got to cut those items. And then make sure you really know where you're going. What is your brand messaging? What is your product messaging? And is the team kind of working together? I think that's one of the things that I'm probably so proud of that isn't known, is how well my leadership management team works together. I mean, they're just amazing. The way they work together and support each other. They all know what they're each individually responsible for, but how they intersect is just, it's kind of a joy to watch.
Yeah, sounds like you found your sweet spot. I can hear it in your voice.
It's good.
Well, this has been one of the most practical and great conversations I've had on this show, so thank you for all of those pearls of wisdom. For our listeners who want to learn more about Heartland America or find you online, where should they go?
Go to heartlandamerica.com. I have a couple of examples of our catalogs. You can get one online or digitally go through it, or you can sign up for an email and sign up to actually have a catalog shipped to your house. But I really appreciate this time. It was really lovely that I got to share some of the wonderful things that are happening at Heartland.
Yeah. And for our Think Small listeners, if this conversation made you think twice about who your best customers actually are, or if it reminded you that operational basics, the blocking and tackling that Kendra talked about, are still the most powerful strategic tool that you have, or the culture in your leadership team, please share this podcast with another founder who needs to hear it. We'll see you all next time, and thanks so much, Kendra, for being on Think
Small. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?